Good evening, and sorry about the late start whilst we tried to figure out our IT issues here. So thanks for bearing with us. Thanks for joining us tonight. We know that safety in our borough is our top concern for residents. It's what they raise with us, it's what you talk to us about, and it's also shown by our resident insight survey as well that it's your top issue. To help keep you informed about what the council and the police are doing together to tackle community safety issues, we want to host webinars like this roughly every 6 months so that we can make sure you've got the latest updates. I also want to thank everyone who's given us a question to answer tonight. That really helps us. It helps us to see what your specific concerns are, and we'll be devoting most of the time in this meeting to answering your questions. So during the webinar, you're going to hear about the joint work that the police and the council are doing with community partners across our borough to prevent as well as to respond to crime and to antisocial behaviour. This includes the issues that we know matter most to you, and your insight has the greatest impact on, we know has the greatest impact on you. So that includes drug crime, that includes phone theft, it includes youth violence and violence against women and girls. Whilst in Waltham Forest we do have lower crime rates than in London overall, we know that when a crime happens to you, when you're the victim of a crime, it can be hugely distressing, and antisocial behaviour can have a massive and persistent impact on residents as well and on our wider community. So for us, it's our mission to make sure that we work with you to make sure we can all live without fear and live safely. As I'm sure we're aware, there is a significant financial pressure on public services in our borough, and our borough's not immune to the things that the rest of London and the rest of the country are facing. And both police services and local authority services have more people than ever that rely on our support. We know that there isn't just one solution to solving our problems in relation to community safety. It needs all of us working together, the police, the council and you, to make sure that we can put our limited resources where they're most needed and find the most effective solutions to problems. The data that you provide every time you make a report helps us to build a picture of the borough. It helps us to understand crime trends. It helps us to identify hotspots and key people of interest in those locations. So I guess the number one message I've got tonight is please keep talking to us, and please also keep using the ways that you can report, which we will show in this webinar. Looking to the future, we want to create more opportunities for these kinds of conversations between residents and the police, including 2 of these webinars a year. But it also relies on more local things like police ward panels that are happening regularly in wards, and expanding opportunities to learn from and engage with young people. So all those things are ways that we can engage and work better together. So we're joined today by Superintendent Dan Card, who's the Borough Commander for North East London, which is basically our borough and Newham. And we're also joined by Superintendent Sarah Jackson, who's our lead for neighbourhood policing. The 2 of them are going to be talking to you about their work in Waltham Forest. So I'm going to pass over to Dan and to Sarah. Over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Sarah, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah, sorry, it's all right. I've got a loud echo in the room, so I might have to cut it a little bit short. Is it?
It's fine.
Okay. Sorry. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sarah Jackson. I'm the Superintendent for Neighbourhoods in Waltham Forest. Thank you, everyone. I can see the chat bar. Sorry, we've got some comms issues here tonight. I'm just going to talk you through, I've made a few slides here to talk about some work that we're doing in neighbourhood policing across Waltham Forest, and just really want to expand on how community crime fighting works in neighbourhood policing, and how we work to cut crime, rebuild some trust restore our bond with our communities. How we're looking to put more officers and more of our police community support officers on the front line. So, for example, in Chingford, I've recently had 3 new PCSOs are joining us that are helping us with some of the work that we're doing in Station Road. And I think for those of you in the community that see some of our community support officers, they're familiar faces that really help us in some of our wards throughout Waltham Forest. We utilise them in our work to fight crime across all of our wards. How we engage with our communities at the moment, especially with some of the challenges that we're facing, as the councillor just mentioned, how we engage with our public is going to be really important at the moment. So things like ward panels, community forums, our independent advisory groups, police encounter panels, and Met Engage, which I'm going to come on to talk about now, are all going to be really important ways in how we engage with you. So Met Engage at the moment, for those of you that haven't heard of it, is a 2-way communication platform. So I think the link is going to be put in the chat bar, and it's become a new way about how the police can interact with the public on a digital platform. It's a consistent tool for all boroughs. It has rolled out now across the Metropolitan Police Service on how we can message each other, how you as the public can communicate with us in a more interactive way and receive updates from your police officers in your neighbourhood policing teams. If the link goes into the chat, if it doesn't and you can't see it in the chat bar, then you could put it into a Google search engine. It's on Metropolitan Police sites, and you can, I think there's some questions that are coming up in the chat bar. Yeah, if I could have the next slide. Again, we're going to go on here to some of our community-led policing plans, and part of that, as I've already said, Met Engage is a really important part of that. It gives the community voices on a digital platform in order to look at our priorities and where our focus really is at the moment, and how we can improve some of the things that are our policing priorities. Just wanted to talk a little bit about how we decide what our priorities are and how we problem solve with some of these. So I've got 3 inspectors that lead across Waltham Forest in Chingford, Leytonstone and Walthamstow, and they will have their monthly meetings where we work in partnership with our local authorities and local groups into how we look at where our hotspots are and how we use that multi-agency input to really task all of our assets out, where we deploy our staff in order to focus on some of those challenges, priority offenders or hotspot areas where we're facing some of our antisocial behaviour, priority crime offences. What we'll do then in what we call our problem-solving planning meetings is we'll then deploy our assets into those areas where we'll use a variety of different tools like high visibility policing, sometimes live facial recognition operations, or a variety of different tactical options in order to take on those challenges. And then we review those on a monthly basis. As a superintendent for Waltham Forest, I have the oversight of all of those borough-wide concerns, and I'll work out where to deploy all of those resources, working in partnership with the local authority and some of our community groups. Next slide. These are my current priorities, working in our ward panels and with conversations we have with you, members of the public. These are what Londoners and the members of Waltham Forest have said that they want to be our neighbourhood priorities. Robbery, violence with injury, knife crime, things that harm people will always be our priority offences. Coming into our homes, residential burglary, again, is one of our priorities in Waltham Forest. Offender management, taking people off the streets of London, off the streets of Waltham Forest that offend in our communities. And again, violence against women and girls, making sure that our females, women, girls are safe on the streets of Waltham Forest. Street crime. This will incorporate retail crime, robbery, theft from the person, violence with injury, and drug-related antisocial behaviour. Some of our priorities at the moment, and have been over the summer, is Operation Martello, which is focused in Walthamstow. We target at the moment with these three main priorities are antisocial behaviour, retail crime and drug offences. So we look at those and how we tackle them in a small area in Walthamstow. That has been the priority over the summer, but we have also worked on operations in Leytonstone and Chingford. We've had Operation Felonite that's run over the summer period as well, that started in the springtime just after my arrival, that's had 41 arrests in the last 6-week period, where we've largely targeted antisocial behaviour and drugs offences. As you would have probably seen in the news, the focus has been on town centres, in making some of our town centres a safe place to be. And we've run a number of policing operations, but a number of partnership working operations in order to make our town centres a safer place to feel. Our business forums that we've launched in both Leytonstone and Walthamstow, they're in the process of, they're underway and have been a success so far. In Chingford, we've also, with our MP there, Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, we've also worked in partnership on some retail crime initiatives, and we've had some real success there as well. Most recently, a priority offender arrested has been charged with over 100 shoplifting offences and currently remains in custody. Really working hard on our high visibility patrolling in Chingford, for example, in Station Road and in Leytonstone. But our focus over the summer period has been Walthamstow in the town centre, where you would have probably noticed an increase in high visibility policing. We've also seen some of our design out crime initiatives. For example, today I've been out with some PCSOs that have been working in Hatch End with the council on improving some of the lighting down there and making sure that that is a safer place to be for the local residents. We'll continue in our pursuit of repeat offenders and compliance of orders, and that is sometimes where our live facial recognition comes in. Again, we ran an operation just in the last week that saw the arrest of 11 repeat offenders for a variety of different offences. Operation Martello, that I've just discussed in Walthamstow, is going to carry on for at least another 6-week period. As you will see here, we have seen some significant reductions. There's a small increase in robbery offences, which has gone up by 3%, but across London, that isn't as much of an increase in comparison to other London boroughs. We are doing all that we can to reduce that. And again, in Leytonstone recently, there's been an operation where we've seen the arrest of repeat offenders in possession of knives and for robbery offences. In theft person offences, we've seen a 33% reduction after a number of policing operations had taken place, and a 9% reduction in violent offences. Although we have seen an increase in 9% in shoplifting offences, this remains one of my priorities over the coming months, particularly in Walthamstow and Chingford, and there has been a 30% increase in positive outcomes of our sanction detections. Antisocial behaviour. So I've mentioned earlier Opna Felonite and Opla Timojong. I don't choose the names, by the way, these names get given to me. But these are areas that my officers have worked really hard on. I'm really proud of some of the work that they've done here. I appreciate antisocial behaviour is what is felt most in our communities across Waltham Forest, really affects some of the residents. Again, out with the PCSOs today that are working in Hatch End, they were working hard with the council to get that lighting up because it was what the residents had said had led them to feel unsettled. Opna Felonite, as I said earlier, has had over 40 arrests, and nearly all of those have been for drug offences, antisocial behaviour offences, and have taken over £11,000 worth of drugs off of the streets in the last month. They continue with their high visibility patrols in these operations, and they will utilise stop and search and closure orders and enforcement. Over the last couple of months, one of the main success stories that we saw was in Selby Road, which had gone on for a long time, but by working in partnership with the local authority, and there was some great work from the ASB team there, helped us close down a premises that had caused significant distress to the members of Selby Road for a long time. Residential burglary was one of my priorities when I first arrived on the borough, and I set up Operation Granafear with some additional funding from our task and coordination group. We saw a 41% reduction in residential burglary over the summer period. Now, this has seen some peaks and troughs, which has gone up, and we normally find that our burglary statistics run in line with our vehicle crime statistics. So as you'll see there, there's been a 38% reduction year on year from 2024 to 25. The 38% reduction runs in line with the vehicle crime. I normally find that when the burglary goes up, so does the vehicle crime. But what we're doing in order to reduce that is continuing with some funding that will lead some lead patrols in hotspot areas in order to reduce that crime. And I'm also working on the distribution of property marking kits, working in partnership with the local authority, and continuing to pursue some of those wanted offenders for burglary offences, of which we managed to twice over the summer period repeat burglary offenders that were arrested and currently remain in custody. Next slide. I'm the Borough Command Unit lead for violence against women and girls, and both officers in New and Waltham Forest both work really hard on this, particularly in Waltham Forest. So Sergeant Helena Besley, she works hard on these. Operation Vigilant, they lead on behavioural detection officer deployments, where we deploy our officers to see behaviours of members of the public that are odd, that may be late at night, where women feel most vulnerable. We also use them to design out crime, similar to what I've mentioned earlier with ASB, lighting, CCTV, and review of some of the environmental conditions that may make women feel safer on their walks home late at night. We've run a number of different operations, and we work in partnership with the licensed premises and with Rana, Ask for Angela, and some of our WAVE training to try and combat spiking offences and how we can ensure that licensed premises are compliant. We do that with our deployment of both our local authority and my neighbourhood licensing teams. I think I'm going to run over if I talk much more.
Thanks, Sarah. And I think,
sorry, over to you, Grace. I think
really,
I've gone over my time.
That's okay. Really important update, because I think it was focused on the improvements in outcomes that we've seen. And that's thanks to you, Sarah, and Dan, and your whole team. But it's also thanks to residents for the reporting, because it's really driving the data that you're using. So thank you. I'm now going to pass over to Ian Billam, who is our Director of Community Safety.
Thanks, Grace. I won't take up too much time on this. So just to further enhance the points Sarah made around working in partnership, the Waltham Forest Community Safety Partnership is the statutory partnership made up of local authority and different departments from that, the police, fire service, health, probation service, predominantly. Then any other partners that we require as them. What we've got are some aspirational priorities here, and they are aspirational when you read the titles, but very much what we're committed to. So protecting communities from drug and alcohol related harm. We have our combating drugs partnership, which sits below the community safety partnership, driving all the work around that in terms of looking at the pipeline of drugs coming into the borough, how we tackle dependency and all of those issues as well. So lots of ongoing work there. Two, we'll hear a little bit more about this shortly, is ending violence against women and girls. And I know that we've got Angelica here that's going to talk a little bit more around that after myself. So again, we're looking at all of the things that are involved in that, rather than just that broad title, looking really at the different aspects of that. We're very, very committed in this borough to tackling those issues. Next is keeping young people safe from violence and exploitation, which also includes our statutory serious violence duty, and also our commitment to knife crime and tackling the issue of knife crime and violence disproportionately in young people and how that occurs, and the exploitation of young people that drives them into those violent lifestyles. So again, a huge commitment there and a huge challenge in and around that. Reducing crime, antisocial behaviour disorder seems kind of broad. What that is that's everything else. That's the relationship that Sarah's kind of touched on as well, between crime and antisocial behaviour, and how that can lead, one can lead into the other, and tackling all of those issues in and around that. And we work very closely again with our police colleagues and other colleagues around that. And the one that I'll probably have to explain the most is number 5, promoting community cohesion. And what's that? That kind of picks up our hate crime, our challenges around people who are drawn into extremism and extreme behaviours, and really looking at how we create a more cohesive and understanding community and build on the things we know that we're really good in this borough in terms of that community resilience and that community strength. So that's what we're building on with that. So that's a huge commitment again within that. And this is all overseen by that community safety partnership, which actually is led by ourselves along with our key partners and chaired by the portfolio holder, Cllr Limbajee, who's actually on the call as well. So this demonstrates our broad depth of partnership working, such a lot of work that we've got going on, driving all of these priorities. They may only look like there's 5, but underneath that is so much work and so many other smaller bits that you've got to tackle these huge issues. And again, that's just part of our commitment to collaboration, really. Very short slide, Grace, so hand straight back to you.
Thanks, Ian. We're making some time back up because I've promised residents that we will obviously focus on questions. But before we do that, I'm going to hand over to Cllr Adesanu, who is our services, our VORG services manager. So Gilly's going to talk to you about that piece of work that many of you don't see. And again, just to stress how important it is as residents that you know about it so you can help us to tackle this issue. Gilly.
Thank you. I would just like to say that you can see, sorry, if you just go back to the last slide, some of the VORG team here out and about doing some of the activities that I'll be talking about later. But I also want to mention that although violence against women and girls refers to any form of physical, emotional or psychological violence that disproportionately is perpetrated by men against women and girls, I do want to say that we understand that it can be experienced by anybody. So when I talk a bit about the work we're doing and the services that are available, just to acknowledge that these services and the support is there and it's available to all residents, regardless of your gender or your gender identity. And the name VORG is in recognition of the disproportionality of who it affects, but the support is there for everybody. Ultimately, we want to ensure that everybody who lives, works, studies in our borough feel safe and they feel secure, and that's one of our borough missions. Next slide, please. So these are our 4 key objectives in VORG. It's about strengthening our coordinated community response. And by that, we are thinking about building shared responsibility and coordination across all agencies that work within our communities. We want to be able to drive joint action that can be flexed and adapted to meet the diverse needs of everybody here, residents, people who live in the borough, people who work in the borough. Another core objective is prevention. We want to take an approach that addresses the root causes of VORG. We want to challenge the values and the attitudes that underpin VORG and make sure everybody knows that these are unacceptable. We want to ensure that there's support for survivors. We want to make sure that survivors get the support they need, when they need it, and in a way that works for them. We want to be able to remove barriers that restrict access to services and ensure that there's no wrong front door for people to access support. And also, lastly, but also very, very importantly, we want to hold perpetrators to account. We want to proactively manage those responsible through swift, proportionate action while providing opportunities for behaviour change. So we want to ensure that systems work to disrupt and tackle those harmful behaviours. So now I'll talk a little bit about how we're doing this. So one of the things that we do is we commission support services and interventions. We ensure that there are independent domestic violence advocates, independent domestic sexual violence advocates, refuges for victim survivors that are fleeing abuse, and also perpetrator behaviour change programmes. Those work in tandem. We want to ensure that there is that support for survivors who want to rebuild their lives, who want to escape or leave abusive situations. But hand in hand with that, holding the perpetrator accountable and providing an opportunity for them to acknowledge and make changes in their behaviour. We also have VORG drop-ins across the borough all week. So these are safe, confidential spaces that anybody can pop into. You can leave your details, you don't need to leave your details, you can access ongoing support, or you can just get a bit of advice. So those are available across the borough, and a lot of all of these details, sorry, are on the borough website, so you can look them up and have a look after and find out if there is somewhere that you want to go to or someone that you want to speak to, where those places are. And those spaces are not necessarily just for people that may be experiencing the abuse at the time or the harm. It can be for somebody that if you have a friend or family member, you want advice in how to support them, pop in. They're there, it's available. The VOG team, as you saw some of the pictures in the last slide, we also undertake outreach across the borough. So we're in high footfall areas, we're giving out our leaflets, we're making sure that residents know that the VOG team are here. We are a small team, so we can't be as spread as widely as we'd like to be, but we are out there and we try to, make sure people know that there is support out there available to you. And if you feel that there is something that an area you'd like us to be in, give us a shout. We have an app, we have a Safe Streets app. So this app is a really important app. It's an app where residents can report incidents of street harassment and empower people to document their experiences. It's an app where you don't necessarily need to leave your details, but you can if you want ongoing support. You can take a picture, you can report anonymously, and it helps us to identify if there are areas of concern. We're also able to, with your consent, share that with the police, and they can put that into their mapping and target hotspot areas. And a big part of our work also is our training program. We have an extensive training program that takes a preventative approach to VOG. This includes awareness training delivered directly from our VOG team. Part of that is to our colleagues in the local authority. We have a phrase about VOG being everybody's business. It's such a big concern. It's not something that just a small little team of people should be doing. It's something that everybody should be worried about and everybody should be wanting to address. So it is all of our business. It impacts all of us. It impacts all of us in very many different ways. Even if you're not directly experiencing it or have someone directly in your family, the repercussions of it impact our community as a whole. So we say it's everybody's business. So we're out there and we're training all of our colleagues in the local authority. But in addition to that, we have a training program that we offer to local businesses and settings. So we have delivered VOG awareness training to libraries and gyms and cafes and faith settings. It's about being able to spot VOG, recognise VOG and know what to do and know who to come to. We're not expecting everybody to be experts, but being able to say, right, this looks a bit dodgy and I want to know who to speak to, or where can I get support, or my friend has said this to me, what do I do? And that could be, any conversation. So we are training those settings, but also we have a community champions program. And this conversation here is a little bit of a call to action. I would like, if you have a business or a setting that you like your staff, colleagues to access training, give us a shout. But also think about becoming a community champion. You access support and training in being able to safely and responsibly disrupt misogyny, disrupt VOG when you see it, being able to, have a word with people that might be displaying harmful behaviours, or even just, being on outreach with us and supporting us and engaging, our communities. We have a whole school approach. So part of the prevention is also about us getting in early. We are delivering a training program in schools and colleges. That's all the way from primary school. And it's age appropriate. So some of it's just about safe friendships and healthy relationships, if it's that age appropriate, but also how to address harassment, what's inappropriate behaviour. We've had really, really good engagement with that. And it's a whole school approach. So as part of that, we offer the school sessions for parents if you want us to come in for a coffee morning and have a chat with you about VOG, or governors and teachers. So everybody should be aware of how to address inappropriate behaviour. And we replicate that in our health approach. So we also have a VOG health approach where we are training our primary care services to be able to spot and get support and offer that consultation. So if they don't know where to go, or if you go into your smoking cessation session and you'd like to be put in touch with the VOG team, that can happen. So we would just like to encourage you to be involved, work in partnership with us if you, feel able to, but also if you would like to find out more. A lot of our details are on the Waltham Forest website, and you can have a look and find out more about what we're doing. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Gilly. That's really inspirational, and I hope that everyone takes away that message that violence against women and girls is all our businesses, and it helps us to create a safe space for everyone, learning some of those skills about how to intervene and how to not be a bystander. So without further ado, we're going to move on to your questions. And the only person I'm going to introduce who I haven't already is Lisa Jones, who's our Assistant Director of River Enforcement and Safety, and she's going to be joining and answering some of those questions. And I'll remind everyone to keep their answers as brief as possible so we can cover as many questions as possible. And I also haven't introduced Cllr Khevyn Limbajee, who's a portfolio holder for community safety and who will be wrapping up our session today. So, first question, what is the council's ASB team responsible for versus the police? Yeah, this is a really important question. Who does what? And I'm going to go to Lisa first.
Thanks, Grace. So our ASB team has 12 officers and they're responsible for street-based ASB, so things like street drinking, aggressive begging, and enforcing our public space protection order as well. In addition to doing that, they also have a tenure-neutral approach to addressing ASB in problematic premises. So that could be anything from prevention work, intervention, so low-level ASB, but also some high-risk ASB cases where we've had to take enforcement action. So Sarah mentioned earlier about Selby Road, where we would get a premises closure order which closes down premises for 3 months. They also are responsible for working very closely in partnership with the police. So we do joint patrols, we're involved in joint operations as well. And in addition to that, just engaging with the public, finding out what their concerns are. They do door knocks, they do street pop-ups, street briefing pop-ups as well, and engage with Gilly and her team as well on VOG. I think where it differs to what the police do, I'd say the police, when the ASB is leaning more towards criminality, that's where it's handed over to the police and they pick up. Also, we need the police to support us sometimes where there are challenging individuals or issues where we have a partnership approach. So we could do, as mentioned earlier, the problem-solving partnership meeting where we look at high-risk issues such as street racing or long-term issues where it takes a more collaborative approach to address those concerns. Is that okay,
Thanks,
Grace?
Lisa. I'm going to come to Sarah, who's going to add a little bit to that, if needed.
Yeah, it's not Sarah. It's Dan Card. I'm the Chief Superintendent, Borough Commander
Dan
for.
on that one. Go for it.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry,
no
you're
worries.
doing. I was just talking about the previous question. I think the only thing I'd highlight for the previous question on ASB is, as you can hear, it's pretty complicated. So, as a resident, the key thing to know is if you need to report ASB, please report it to the council. If it's crime you need to report it to the police. But know that the two teams work closely together. So, you know, we can sort it out where one of our services needs to be involved in what the other's doing. Okay, so moving on to the second question on phone theft, which is Dan. What's being done to prevent and catch phone snatchers? Really key issue in the borough.
Sarah, I'll go to Sarah. I was going to come in on that ASB question, but you pretty much said what I was going to say, Grace. So thank you.
So just talk a little bit about our response to theft from the person, which is largely phone theft, and some of our robbery offences. As I mentioned earlier, we remain committed to targeting these offences. It is one of my focuses, a main priority for us in Waltham Forest, and we continue to work alongside the local authority with this. It's part of my monthly problem-solving partnership meetings, and also we've got a number of business forums where we work on these as one of our focus points. Over the August period, we ran, you may not see, and as I probably have said at previous meetings, although by and large neighbourhood policing is high visibility policing, we have run an undercover operation over the August period called Operation Attleborough, which saw the arrest of 2 prolific theft, person and robbery offenders who currently remain in custody for those offences. They were found in possession of a number of phones that had been stolen using motorised scooters or motorised bikes. And again, we've seen a 31% reduction in theft from person year on year. not only have we got a number of business forums where we work together in Leighton High Street and in Chingford with these, we've got still Op Martello that I've spoken about in the briefing earlier, where we concentrate on focusing on those offences in Walthamstow. We also work in partnership with British Transport Police, where we do a number of operations in and around our transport hubs, and this is where we see a lot of our crime committed. We've worked with the local authority on stenciling over the summer period and since my arrival in February, trying to make people more aware by using some of those advertising products to make sure that people aren't walking down the streets with their phones in their hands at times of day and night where they may feel or be seen to be vulnerable.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm just going to give Lisa the chance to come in if you want to, Lisa, on that one.
Yeah, so the community safety team supports with the prevention side of phone snatching. So as Sarah mentioned, we have done some stenciling in outside transport hubs to try and make people aware to look up, look about, but also some additional comms messaging on how to turn off certain functions on your phone as well. And there's been prevention advice as well, giving out leaflets and speaking to members of the public about property marking kits, etc.
Thanks, Lisa. So I think this will remain a main area of focus for our partnership, because we know it's something that really concerns residents. Okay, so moving on to this question. What are you doing about the drug problem in Leytonstone? And I have for that one, I don't actually know. I think I've got Dan for that one, but I'm not sure because it's not on my list. So.
It's me again.
Go, Sarah.
Yeah, so again, a focus of mine, drug-related activity in Leytonstone. So to support this work, we utilise a variety of different tactics and approaches in ensuring that we've got some diversion approaches in place. So we work really closely with the Project Adder team. The focus of the Project Adder team is to focus in on establishing some coordinated law enforcement activity, but working alongside diversionary programmes to divert people away from drug-related offending, because as you'll probably expect, drug-related offending continues. It doesn't tend to be a one-off offence. So Project Adder really works hard to try and divert people away from those offences. We take those in joint patrols with partners from the local authority, and we usually work these in operations in and around our transport hubs. So you may have seen Project Adder in and around transport hubs in Leytonstone, Leighton over the summer months, and we've got 6 more of those operations planned as we approach the Christmas period. There are a number of also not Opnafella Night, which has run over in throughout Leytonstone and Walthamstow, where we've seen a number of arrests for ASB and drug offences over the last few months.
Thanks, Sarah. And I think, you know, you're really stressing those ongoing partnership efforts which are happening at every level. Lisa, did you want to add to that? You're the perfect double act now.
Sorry, Grace, I did have one more thing that I just forgot to add in there. So sorry, I'm going to talk over Lisa. I didn't mean to. When it comes to drug offences across Waltham Forest, we are 39% down year on year in our offences. And of those offences, we've got a 43% increase in our positive outcomes. So when people are arrested with drugs, they are being sentenced with some sort of sanction detection.
Right, that's a really important bit of information. Lisa.
Just to add as well that where we do identify hotspots through crime data and ASB data, we install CCTV at the location. We have redeployable cameras, which I can speak a bit more about. They stay in situ for 3 months, and it helps us to gather intelligence and evidence which we can share with the police, and it kind of builds into that intelligence pack to then take enforcement action. And in terms of the wraparound support, we work very closely with CGL, which is Change, Grow, Live, our drugs and alcohol support service. So we are providing support as well and looking at enforcement actions, so taking appropriate actions where needed.
Thank you so much, Lisa. So another really important question here. What steps are the police taking to counter aggressive shoplifting that directly impacts on store staff?
Thanks, Grace. So you would have seen, probably everyone has seen across the news, that theft, retail crime has been an increase nationally, and so it's therefore no change in Waltham Forest. We've got areas across Waltham Forest where we see some of the peak of these offences, and my officers have worked really hard in partnership with local authority, our MPs, our local councillors, in how we drive that down. What we've done, as an example, in Chingford, I mentioned earlier, Sir Ian Duncan-Smith's taken a huge interest in retail crime in that area and has been fundamental in setting up the local business crime initiative, which we've got another summit coming in November. We've seen a number of arrests, and with our prolific offenders there, 2 that have been arrested over the summer period, one of which was charged with 67 offences, another was charged in Walthamstow recently with over 100 offences. We are working really hard to try and drive that down, not just with high visibility policing, but with those business forums and with that joint working multi-agency approach. We've also used some more modern techniques in order to try and combat these offences, one of which is retrospective facial recognition. So that's similar to live facial recognition, which is where we've got a still image of offenders that are known previously, repeat offenders with those particular crime types, and we utilise those in order to try and identify them. So we will look at that information, see whether we can go back through those still images and identify a prolific offender. We also use what we've now called a retail crime index, where we target the main offenders through our main retailers to concentrate on those resources in a matrix, because the majority, if you apply the 80-20, is that a small amount of offenders will cause the most amount of offences, and by using that index we will find people that commit all of our offences in certain places. I remain committed to targeting these offences, and I'll continue to work with the local authority and also in partnership with some of those multi-agency problem-solving partnership groups that I mentioned.
Thanks so much, Sarah. And I know that there's a number of locations where this is a real focus. I know that in Leytonstone as well, councillors have been really focused with council officers and police on the town centre on that issue too. So we're going to move on to car theft. Is vehicle theft getting the attention it needs, and is there a dedicated unit investigating it, and what are the recovery rates? Dan, this is your one, I think.
So thanks, Grace. There's a couple of those points that I can answer. There's a couple of points I can't answer. Is it getting the attention it needs? I think so, yes, and I'll explain why I think it is. Is there a dedicated unit investigating it? No, because we found through experience that dedicated investigation units become focused on one type of crime, which doesn't enable us to flex easily into other areas of crime. As Sarah mentioned, there's a big crossover between vehicle theft and burglary because of how offenders behave in terms of that. And the recovery rates, that isn't one that I can get quite quickly. It doesn't come in data that simply. What I will do is I'll talk you through what we're currently doing around car theft and give you some stats, which hopefully give some confidence to people. It remains a focus for us across the borough, as does other acquisitive crime, because we know the links between them. We continue to conduct policing operations, both overtly and covertly at peak times where we know that these offences are happening. As Sarah mentioned earlier, we've managed to secure some additional funding, which means we can have officers in those hotspot locations where we know for longer periods of time. There have been a number of arrests and trials that are still ongoing at the moment in regards to our activity in that space, and we share some of that at ward panel meetings. What that actually means in real terms is, compared to last year's crime stats, we have seen a 23% reduction in theft of vehicles across Waltham Forest. And in terms of theft from vehicles, we've seen a 27% reduction. And I'm quite pleased about that work, because behind each one of those figures is a real person who's had their car stolen, had something stolen from the car, and all the inconvenience that goes with that. I will talk about it later on, but I'll put the link to our stats in the chat so people can see the crime stats about where we are, so you don't just have to take my word for it. But we continue to work really closely with the local authority, not only around target hardening various locations, making sure we got the correct lighting, but about giving people that information and making sure things like car parks are safe, and people can do all they can to reduce their vulnerability to crime.
Thanks, Dan. And we have about 10 minutes left, just over 10 minutes. So I'm going to remind people to be as brief as they can in their answers so we can cover as many questions as possible. So the next question is on CCTV. And it's something I think it's really useful for people to understand. How many CCTV cameras do we have in the borough, and how can they be used? How do we decide on their locations? Lisa.
Yep. So we have over 1,000 CCTV cameras, and we have 65 redeployable cameras that I mentioned earlier. The decision on the locations that they are installed at, the redeployable cameras, is taken to our problem-solving partnership meeting. Those are held on a monthly basis. We look at the intelligence from, the data from crime stats and ASB stats, but not only data, because it's important for us to know what our residents and community are telling us is happening in their areas as well. So we also do door knocking, look at our ASB complaints, and then that's discussed at the meeting and the locations are then agreed. Very important to note as well that these cameras, they're not used for parking enforcement, they're not used for traffic infringements, they are actually used for, community safety. And the team also pick up so many other different issues as well, such as missing persons, etc. And we have a link into the police as well, so we in real time share information when incidents happen.
Thanks, Lisa. That gives us a really good picture. So this question we'll take, but we'll keep it really brief. So Sarah, where can we find updates on high profile crimes or on crimes we report? And what factors do police consider when sharing information about active investigations?
Thanks, Grace. I'll answer that one. So the long story short is it's done on a case-by-case basis. Obviously, the more serious crimes have a dedicated senior investigating officer, and it's always a consideration of balancing the investigation versus reassuring the community, and at what point we want to release the information in that. We always have to be mindful of contempt of court rules. So there is only so much we can release at certain stages of an investigation. Once the case is over, we're much freer to talk about it, but we would do that through either press statements, through social media, or through Met Engage, which is now our sort of preferred method. When we talk about crimes that they report, again, it's much more a victim first approach, really. So when we're talking about reassuring the wider community, that's conversations we try to have with the victim before. We're careful not to perhaps expose or out somebody who's a victim of the crime. We may not necessarily want others to know about it. Again, so it's just that delicate balancing act between the two. But anybody who reports a crime should have a dedicated officer in the case given to them and be able to contact that officer for updates.
Thanks, Dan. So our next question is on knife crime, which is obviously a really big concern to residents. So what's been done to tackle knife crime, and how many arrests have been made? And I'll remind people, if we can, to keep it brief so we can keep through questions.
Thanks, Grace. So my officers are out day in, day out across Waltham Forest, actively patrolling their wards and areas, normally in high visibility, because they're neighbourhood policing officers, utilising their stop and search powers. But also we've got our proactive teams. At the moment, we've got some of my territorial support colleagues across Waltham Forest, really working hard to drive down knife crime across the borough. It's an ongoing tactic that we use stop and search in order to keep the public safe. And from a preventative aspect, we regularly visit schools and engage with students about the dangers of knife crime and offer prevention. We work in partnership with Operation Safer Routes as well, which is a council-led police-supported scheme, and has recently launched, where volunteers patrol the school routes and break down barriers with schools, children, youth, to ensure that any relevant information is passed to police to act upon. My teams are regularly supported, as I've mentioned, by the TSG, my territorial support colleagues, and they're tasked in Walthamstow at the moment, along with my proactive teams, doing weapon sweep, knife arch operations, and these take place on a weekly basis as standard. Over the last 2 weeks, I've seen some stops and search take place in Wood Street as part of Opnafella Night, where 2 large knives were taken off the streets of Waltham Forest. And this has been a theme across the summer period, where we've worked really hard with Op Martello in Walthamstow and made sure that stop search has been one of the tactics we consider when we're high visibility policing.
Thanks, Sarah. Sarah, I'm going to come to Ian from the council side.
Thanks very much, Grace. Again, I'll be quick. So, in support of the work that the police do as well, you look a lot like me. We have a wide range of social, emotional, and practical support that we provide to young people, the families, the carers. We also work closely with schools, along with our police colleagues, to raise awareness about knife crime and to support the children and young people to feel safe. I mentioned safer routes, which I'll talk about a little bit more in the next question. Partnership response to knife crime, again, we're reviewing always constantly what we're doing around that. It's part of the council's ongoing mission to tackle knife crime, particularly amongst young people. But that requires a collaboration beyond just ourselves and the police, and so we're looking at that with all of the key partners, and we work quite effectively and closely with that voluntary and community sector organisations, again, to see how we can help work with young people and enhance their safety.
Thanks, Ian. That's great. I'm not going to cover the safer routes one because I think Sarah highlighted how important this piece of work has been. So we're going to move straight on to our last question, which is about communications. What is being done to make the public aware of the actions the council and police are taking to address crime and ASB? And I believe we have got Dan and then Ian on this one, or vice versa.
Sorry about that. So comms, I think we've talked across a few of the pieces. So we have the council has a residents newsletter which goes out weekly. We have our community safety newsletter which goes out once a month. We also have the WhatsApp channel, police, which Dan talked about and was mentioned earlier, have Met and Engage, which I think is in the chat as well. And we put a lot of the links in the chat. There's also the ward panels, which people are invited to attend in person, and we'll provide updates in person in there as well. There's also, I think we're going to provide the links to the newsletters, etc. So there's lots of means to engage across that and lots of information, a couple of examples on the screen there as well. Always looking to improve the information that we put out and make sure we improve our reach for that as well through our communications colleagues.
Thank you. Sarah, anything to add?
So no, really, Ian has covered it all. My plea to anyone online would be, please join Met Engage, please talk to us. It is very much a two-way tool to make sure that we can talk to people in our communities and be effective. Please come to your ward panel meetings. We are interested in what you say. We do want to make it neighbourhood focused, locally focused, and take action that impacts on you and makes you feel safer in your community. So please do all you can to come and speak to us. We're itching to come and talk to you.
Thanks so much, Dan. And I, really echo that. Please get in touch. Your councillors are also there in your wards. Please contact them if you have issues too. We all want to work together to make the borough safer. And I'm going to give the final word to Kevin, who is going to wrap up our session today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Grace. Unfortunately, we are now at the end of our time, but we will be publishing both this recording and written responses to the questions asked on our website. The recording will be sent out directly to subscribers of the Community Safety newsletter later this week. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so now. The link should be in the meeting chat for you now. We'll also publish it on our council Facebook page. We also have a WhatsApp channel specifically for updates about community safety, and we share information about upcoming events and services there every week. Again, the link to sign up will be posted on the chat. So again, thank you all for coming today and for engaging with us. To everyone who takes the time to make a report, attend a ward panel, or join events like this one, we're sincerely grateful for your help in keeping the community as safe as possible. If you have asked a question that we haven't been able to answer, We will be publishing a full answers on our website along with the webinar recording. And if you'd like to speak to the police officers working in your neighbourhood, I really encourage you to join your next ward panel. There are several going on in September that we'll post in the chat, but you can find more information on the Met website. I'll leave you with the information for reporting crime and antisocial behaviour up on the screen. But remember, in an emergency, always call 999. Thank you.
Time.